Welcome to the Dink Smallwood review. This time is going to be a bit different from my normal review structure, because I can pretty much summarize what playing the game is like in a couple of sentences. Dink Smallwood is an action RPG, similar to Diablo, but mostly like the original Legend of Zelda. Gameplay is extremely simple. You have an attack, a magic slot, and the ability to hit and run. Combat boils down to hitting an enemy as much as possible before running off and repeating. I don't have much to say about actually playing the game, but you don't experience Dink Smallwood just for the gameplay. The real reason to play this game is to experience the twisted mind of one Dink Smallwood. To that end, this review will be more of a storytelling journey rather than a straight review. Just like watching a grown man destroy his GI tract by eating a 5-pound bag of sugarless gummy bears, I believe the pain inflicted by this game is best experienced vicariously. So strap in, and get ready for Dink and his domestic abuse arc. The game starts simple enough. Dink lives on a farmstead with his single mother and helps raise pigs. Dink's mother asks him to feed the pigs, and I respond by accidentally starting the domestic abuse arc early. Disclaimer: although it might be controversial, I do not support beating women. Anyway, the control scheme is a little bizarre. Talking and interacting with objects is bound to space, and the attack button is bound to control. However, selecting dialogue choices is also bound to the control key. As a result, my brain keeps interchanging the two buttons, which often leads to Dink beating people. There is a way to change the keybinds, but for a reason unknown to me, all of the buttons are preset, and there's only 10 or so options. I believe the keys currently set are the way they are for a reason, however, so I'll continue to use the default. I decided to ask Dink's mom a few questions before feeding the pigs, as it's pretty clear a guy like him is going to need all the help he can get. Most of these dialogue options are fairly normal, but there's this psychotic last choice, which is a common theme in most of the choices you get playing this game. It feels like Dink is teetering on some kind of edge, and that feeling only gets worse later. Anyway, Dink's mother doesn't have much to say, other than the usual expository knowledge. One other interesting thing is that by interacting with elements of the environment, Dink will sometimes have something to say about it. After starting his task to feed the pigs, Dink gets a visit from the local cool guy, Milder Flatstomp. He doesn't have much to say other than calling Dink a squirt and giving him a hard time about pig farming. There's some tension between these two, and it seems that Milder doesn't think much of Dink. Don't worry, Dink will get his chance for glory soon enough. Once I was done with pig feeding, I decided to poke around the village a little to see what's what. I picked up a few quests doing this, like clearing out the old Smilestein farm and rescuing old Lady Ethel's duck. Not much to start with, but every hero has to start somewhere. Upon leaving the village, I ran into a short little wizard guy who promised to teach me magic. After casually harassing him, I agreed to meet up with him later and go back to nut hunting. Unfortunately, the well-contained fire in the fireplace spreads out of control and destroys the Smallwood residence, along with Dink's mom. After being consoled by the villagers, except for Milder, who was probably cheating on a girl or something, Dink receives some good news. His aunt heard about the accident and is willing to take him in. Before I meet with Dink's aunt, I decide now would be a good time to learn some magic. This area was previously unavailable to me, but now I can go to the cabin in the woods and learn some sweet magic. Unfortunately, Dink blows the meeting and comes across a bit too strong. In order to prove myself as a trustworthy and honorable man, I have to beat a wild animal to death with my fists. I would like to point out how the writing style has been so far. It's entertaining for sure, but something about it strikes me as, I don't know, just a little amateur. It's not poorly written or anything, but some of the grammar choices are questionable. After the cabin meet, I head over to the cave the wizard mentioned and kill the talking dinosaur. Returning to the wizard's cabin reveals that he's gone, leaving only a note and some money. Reading the note grants Dink the fireball spell, which drastically changes how combat works now. Instead of just punching, I can now attack at range. Magic also reveals one of the game's major shortcomings in my opinion. This game feels like it drags on, to the point where I think the 6 hours that it is could be trimmed down to like 4 or 5 hours. This is on top of using the built-in speed up key that the game tells you about, and using the double speed up key combo that the game doesn't tell you about. So basically, you can hold down the tab key to speed up the game time, but if you hold down tab and the magic button, which is shift by default, you can double the speed up rate. Even with the increase in speed, there are parts of the game that in my opinion have no real reason to exist. This won't be immediately obvious, but it gets real rough before long. Once I've acquired the fireball spell, I have the ability to burn down some of these evergreen trees. Normal trees stay burned down, but some of the trees hide secrets behind them or even under them. There's a few secret areas throughout the game, and I found it worthwhile to try and hunt them all down. Now that I have some attack capability, it's also time to clear out the Smilestein farm. There's a few of these bug things to kill, except one of them is superpowered somehow. Clearing the farm out lets Dink return to the residence and meet up with Smile's daughter, Libby. Everyone in the family seems down, so naturally, Dink tries to figure out why. Dink, I don't think you can say that. After failing to score with Libby, I decide to head back out into the world. It's not long before I make it to Aunt Maria's house. We meet Dink's Uncle Jack here, and it looks like he didn't know we were coming. Maria greets us and gives us our own room. It also has its own save station, which I'm going to use as we're about to enter the second act of the domestic abuse storyline. Going downstairs, we see that Jack is a professional, domestically abusing his wife at incredibly high speeds. Interrupting, I have a few options at my disposal. Dink can choose to tell his aunt to continue to be beaten so that you can learn from Jack's expertise. Dink can also provoke Jack into beating Maria some more. Okay, look, I know this seems pretty bad, but listen. The other option is to tell Maria to leave Jack, which is the canon choice. Dink does not support domestic abuse, even if he sometimes does it by accident. Maria is scared of Jack, however, and right now he kills us fairly quickly. We'll come back to deal with him later. Going into town, we can talk with some people around the area. The main hub is in this bar, which isn't exactly hopping, but the cool people allegedly hang out here. I start to talk to these two guys before Milder Dick Stomper shows up and kills our reputation instantly. Man, Milder sure sucks. It would be a shame if something unspeakable happened to him. Anyway, I won't get much further with these two until I do something heroic, even if I harass the local barmaid. I wouldn't recommend trying to threaten the bartender. Both the paths that lead forward are blocked off, so I guess I have to find something to do. There's an old lady that lost her daughter, and despite Dink's best efforts to pry a reward out of her, it's no use. I guess he's just gonna have to do it out of the good of his heart, or for the inevitable boost to his reputation. I can't actually do anything about this right now though, so I'll just shelve it for the time being. There's also a medic in town who sells health elixirs, and someone who sells a real, actual weapon. It's a bit out of my budget for now, so I'll have to collect some money. Collecting money will be the bane of my existence, but that's in the future. After killing enemies for experience and looking around some more, I stumble onto an abandoned mine, with all the riches that such a place promises awaiting me. I enter, and it's more of those dinosaurs. One important thing to note is that every time you hit one of these things, it makes this loud bull sound. I'm sure that won't be grating later. At this point, a new problem arises. The screen is locked, meaning that I can't leave until the enemies are dead. It's not hard to dodge out of the way and attack with fire spells, but they have some health, and my magic takes a while to recharge. Killing them actually drops gold, so it seems I have a source of income now. Unfortunately, they're dropping chump change, and I'm still roughly $200 away from getting a sword. Exploring the mine some more, I encounter a guy stuck behind a single rock. He tells Dink that he'll need something more powerful than a fireball to clear the rubble, and to try asking around town. Despite Dink's best efforts to come off as unlikable as possible, I decide to head back into town and try to gather some help. At the bar, I'm told to try the old man just to the south, and after some communication issues, he finally lets me into his house. He's willing to teach me some advanced magic, but he says that Dink isn't powerful enough, and that he needs to be magic level 5. I'm currently at level 3. Unless I find a couple of magic potions around the area, I'm going to have to level up twice. If you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that on death, a gold number will appear above an enemy. That's XP gain. Getting that amount from combat alone is gonna suck big time, but at least I can get the money for the sword at the same time. After a few rounds in the mines, I have enough money to buy the longsword, and then I accidentally sell it. After a quick break, and some mood stabilizing, I rebuy the sword and head back to the mines to get some XP. I eventually get the levels I need and head back to town to get the fancy new spell. The old man gives me Acid Rain. Although it's easy to write off, this spell is actually kind of useful against slow-moving enemies. The problem is seldom few of the enemies are slow enough to make any use from the spell, and the ones that are can basically be stepped on. It also takes 3 to 5 business days to recharge, so I'll just stick with the fireball. If you decide to play this game, try leveling up only magic. It'll speed up your spell recharge times and come in handy for other reasons later. Before going back to free the prisoner, I decide to deal with Uncle Jack. Using only the bravest of tactics, such as placing furniture between me and him during the fight, I'm able to kill Jack. This upsets Maria, but she gets over it in seconds. Maybe she's getting over it a little too quickly. Sharing a bed? No.
Chalupas, just 99 cents for a limited time.
It's wild.
Only at Taco Bell.
I'm a human.
Killing Jack ends the abuse arc, and frees Dink from the cycle of womanizing for at least an hour or two. Delving back into the mine, I free the prisoner, and we're jumped by some troopers from a group called the Cast. The Cast are a terrorist group, whose only goal is to maim and kill the local populations. The prisoner immediately tries to fight all of them and gets killed in one hit. Before dying, the prisoner gives Dink a scroll, and sends him to complete a quest he was on. I can use the scroll given to me to open this back area behind the Castle of the Realm. King Daniel resides here, and he had this area sealed off for something. Talking with the guards in front of the castle, it seems that King Daniel is a kind-hearted yet iron-fisted ruler. He purged the goblins in the War of 23, and let some of them live in an area to the southwest near the shoreline. Anyway, back to the task at hand. Going into this forest has a few enemies to kill, as well as this hidden little cottage. Going to the back of it reveals a ritualistic gathering, focused on this dead dragon. The cultists seem way too in love with the corpse, and in the middle of their worship, this guy named Bishop Nelson arrives with none other than the daughter of the old lady from earlier. Instead of listening to me and staying hidden, Dink decides that he would rather shout something. Dink also decides that the best course of action would be to support sacrificing Mary. The bishop lets Dink into the circle only to sick his girls on him, which turns out to be more of those dino creatures. I just want you to take a second and absorb this scene with the audio. The music choices made for this game are starting to strike me as a little unhinged. I haven't really brought up the music up to this point because I think it's just okay, but there's actually some pretty good tracks in the files. They're MIDI tracks, but converted to work with the game. They can range wildly in quality, but I think they're all worth listening to at least once. After killing the Dino Girls, the bishop also reveals that he's a monster. Killing him is easy, I just stay back and use magic on him. I rescue Mary and bring her back, gaining a massive reputation boost. The town news is starting to show Dink as a bit of a hero, but Milder is hogging the spotlight like always. Reveling in his newfound popularity, Dink decides to head out west to a town called Cursin, now that the rocks are cleared. Only seconds pass before a new threat shows up. The cast are planning on targeting Cursin, right in the middle of its massive yearly festival. It also looks like they're planning on using the goblins to the south as a scapegoat. Dink heads into town and runs into the mayor's daughter, and manages to avoid hitting on her. She takes me to the mayor, who wants to help, but needs proof before he can summon reinforcements. My best bet is to talk to the Mog Goblin the cast mentioned, but before I can enter, I need to get past this guard, who won't let me pass unless I have a bow. Not a problem, I'll just buy one real quick. For $1,000. Luckily, there's an area nearby that has a lot of enemies that drop money. The dino here even starts infighting. They drop a fair amount of cash too, so now all I need to do is go back to the area and they're not respawning. Thankfully, there's a couple of other enemy groups nearby, and I'm able to pay for the bow. Small issue. If I want the bow to actually have any utility, I need to get bow lore, which costs $1,500. Oh. This is probably the worst experience I've had in a while. Just going between collections of enemies and grinding for cash. After a grueling length of time, I can finally shell out for the bow lore. The guard recognizes me with the bow, and lets me into the goblin camp. I'm free to explore, but if I want to summon Mog, I'll have to kill the guys in front of his tent. This fight in particular is probably the least fun in the game, mostly because the battle area is like half the size as normal. and goblins have a lot of health, and hit like a truck. I managed to get the bigger guys to infight, and with a lot of crying and screaming, I'm able to get Mog out of his tent. It turns out he was raised by humans, but that doesn't really matter as Dink is here to beat the answers he needs out of him. The fight isn't actually too bad, mostly because I don't have to worry about walking off the edge of the screen. Mog gives up the location of the cast hideout, and after a little bit of stealth, Dink manages to get the plans of the cast. Sadly, there's no stealth stat for Dink, so he's almost immediately attacked after leaving camp. This fight isn't that great either, but it's manageable. With the cast out of the way, the mayor is able to summon the guards and save the town. The festival is able to go as planned, and it kinda sucks. But no one died, which is probably a good thing. I could explore around the town some more, but aside from a couple of weirdos, there's not much else going for it. Although this beach is kind of weird. Looking at the town news gives Dink's ego a boost, as tales of his heroics are starting to spread. It's a start, but we can do better. Moving on to the next town, there already seems to be something off. Most of the villagers seemed instantly hostile or desperate, and it looks like there's a famine about. It's not long before I run into a villager who claims that the town is run by ducks. Not like sentient ducks or anything, just normal ducks that we've seen all game. Unhinged as this is, I press on. Pretty soon I run into the duck shrine, and man, it's really something alright. None of the villagers are cooperating with me, and none of them are giving up the duck worship, so it's up to Dink to figure something out. After pretending to be Jack Bauer for a little bit, this tree tells me that there's a rock at the shrine I can destroy to get in. Luckily, pretty much every shopkeeper sells cheap bombs. I quickly get access to the shrine, and ponder for a bit on what to do. After some thought, Dink decides to commit a holy cleansing not seen in a millennium. The raw divine fury of my attacks instantly cooks the ducks to a mouth-watering crisp, leaving only the smell of vicious combat and cooked waterfowl behind. Unfortunately, it's not long before a villager discovers that I've just killed the town idols, and he quickly gets a guard. Thankfully, the villager's daughter decides to throw caution to the wind and try some freshly cooked deity. Hunger gets the better of everyone here, and they all discover that not giving everything to ducks is a good idea, and that eating ducks is better than worshipping them. As a result of this, Dink becomes the town god, and gets his own statue in record time. Despite just forming a cult, I decide to stick around and talk to all the villagers. Most of them are thankful, but still unhelpful, although this one family is hiding a secret tunnel to an island in their basement. Looking at the news again, Milder is still hogging the spotlight, but Dink is starting to look like a real hero. Now that we've cleared out all the towns, we can finally get an audience with the king. After complaining about taxes, Dink asks the king if he can help Milder in his quest in the Darklands, and the king agrees to let him go with a warning that he might not come back. Not much is known about the Darklands, other than the cast is currently operating there, and most of the hostile wildlife has been spawning from that area. Going up to the cliffs, I encounter these golem enemies that hit me for most of my health, and more importantly, take no damage from me whatsoever. That's great. Poking around, there's a promising spell called Hellfire I can buy for a meager 1500. After doing a bit of money gathering, I buy the spell, and it works wonders against the golems. It also takes 500 years to recharge, so I'll be making liberal use of the speed up key. I explore around some more, eventually making my way to a couple of buildings. In one building, there's a priestess who's doing her best to hold off the evil that's coming from the Darklands. She also has a couple of ancient weapons, and I need the massive bow, which is 5,000 gold. Thankfully, all of the enemies in this area drop cash, and exploring around the cliff some more reveals a secret path that leads to an icy castle. I fight to the end and encounter this wizard, who explains that Dink is part of a powerful lineage of magic users. I immediately write this off as headcanon, because the wizard hasn't seen what I've seen. We can just chalk it up to the guy being stuck in rubble for 100 years. Going back to the cliffs, I've run out of income sources, so it's time to enter the Darklands for more money. I stop by the church first to donate some gold and drink the holy water, which heals me completely. This cardboard sign left by the Ancient Ones tells Dink to be careful with the machine, but if I could describe Dink as anything, it would not be careful. Entering the Darklands, it's actually a little spooky. Quick saving after every encounter is kinda necessary as well, as a couple of enemies are basically unkillable. It's not long before I have enough cash, and I buy the massive bow with massive attack. I don't have much protection though, so I'll have to rely on my hit and run techniques. Looking back at all that I've done to get here, I try not to think about the fact that Dink killed that village girl for no reason, before setting off to save the world. I find the tunnel leading to the final area, and I enter a land bridge crossing the river Styx, entering the very pits of hell itself. I find Milder, who's been stomped flat, and he tells me to leave while I can, before the incarnation of pure evil returns. Of course, Dink wants to take Milder's advice and his wife, but in pursuit of higher virtues, I persuade Dink to be the bigger man. Dink almost has Milder up when... That's the guy? His name is Seth, and he blows at Milder with an explosion. What is this? This is written like a forum RP. Okay, so after Milder dies, I have to fight Seth. He has a pretty predictable movement pattern, which speeds up with damage taken. He can summon explosions, which have a short attack window for me, as well as a random greater harm spell that hits wherever I am. Since I have so much magic stat, I can sometimes shrug off the damage. It takes a couple of tries, but I manage to kill Seth and return as the hero. Going back to the king, he thanks me for my hard work, and the credits roll. After that, I'm free to explore the world. No offense to the world, but I think I'll pass. Honestly speaking, even though the combat was really kinda painful at times, I enjoyed what the game had to offer. It had some lows, but the highs were surreal and entertaining. It's an interesting little game, and it also has a ravenously dedicated fan base. There's actually a large collection of mods available called D-mods, or Dink mods, as they're properly called. These are actually pretty interesting, and since you've already seen the base game, I'd at least give them a try. The game and its mods are completely free, and who knows, maybe you'll like it, even if the mods can be a bit much at times. Anyway, Dink Smallwood is a game I'm glad I played, but sometimes I wonder how much of the game I was really in control of. Maybe there's a Smallwood in all of us. Thanks a lot for watching. I know it's been months at this point since my last video, but between moving and trying to be on the same mental wavelength as this game, it took a while. More videos are coming sooner and with less time between them. I'll probably be continuing my streak of, let's call them avant-garde games, but I'm always looking for recommendations to add to my list. Until next time.